were taking care of customers, things of that nature, right?
Yep.
And obviously we know that you didn't film the entirety of the incident from the beginning to the end, right?
Right.
And that's because you were working, right?
Yeah.
In part, at least. And I think as we saw from your video, there were cars coming in to get gas, there were people coming into the store, that type of thing was happening, right?
Yeah.
All right. And you ultimately, you remember that you gave a statement to an agent with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension.
Yep.
His name was Brent Peterson. Would you disagree if I told you that that was on May 28th of 2020?
Okay. I don't remember this.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you have no reason to, it was within a couple of days of this incident, right?
Yeah.
And do you recall telling Agent Peterson, one of the things that you didn't understand was why they took him back out of the car?
Yeah.
Because based on what you observed Mr. Floyd get into the car, both doors were shut, correct?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, according to your video, the taller officer just pulled him out of the back of the squad car.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you also, do you recall testifying or telling Agent Peterson that the people in this area here, there was a female cop?
I don't remember. Oh.
All right. Yeah, sorry. Do you remember a female police officer being there?
I don't remember. This was so long ago.
Okay. Would it refresh your recollection to review, well, did you ever have an opportunity to review a transcript or an audio recording of your interview with Agent Peterson?
Say that again?
Prior to coming in and testifying, were you ever given a copy of your transcript?
I seen it or heard it.
Did you read it?
No.
Okay. Would it help refresh your recollection to look at a copy of your transcript?
Not really.
Oh my God.
So you don't remember ever telling Agent Peterson that there was a female officer on scene?
It could have been, yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of officers.
All right. Now, you testified that you took the first two videos from inside the speedway,
Yeah.
and then at some point you went out into kind of in the middle of the parking lot area, right?
Yeah.
Or the entrance where cars would be coming in to get to the gas pumps.
Yeah.
You were out there on your break, right?
Yep.
And I think we saw, based on your video, that what you did is you sort of zoomed in so you could get a closer camera view, right?
Yep.
And you zoomed it to the maximum that your camera would allow you to zoom in.
Yep.
And from where you were standing, ultimately when you were outside, you had the opportunity to make observations about what the officers were doing with Mr. Floyd, right?
Okay.
I mean, would you agree with that?
Yep.
And you had the opportunity to make observations about kind of what else was going on, right?
Yeah.
In fact, one of the videos you actually had a conversation with someone else, right?
Yep.
So if you were standing across the street from where Mr. Floyd and the police officers were interacting, you would have one view, but you would agree that when we look at a camera, that's just kind of one perspective, right?
I mean, I guess, but there's multiple cameras though.
I understand. I guess what I'm saying is that when you're recording, your camera is only going to capture what's out in front, right?
Yeah.
But when you're recording, you said you were, looking, making sure you didn't get hit by a car, right? So you have the ability to turn your head from left to right. You can look up, you can look down, you can talk to people, and you can look around, right?
Okay, yeah.
But your camera is still in that one fixed position.
Yeah.
All right. So you were able to make observations. As this incident progressed, would you agree that more and more people started stopping and watching what was going on?
Yes.
There were some people standing in front of you. There were some people standing to your right. Recall that?
Yeah.
And then obviously there were the people that were closer over by where the officers were as well, right?
Yeah.
And then even on the like kitty corner from where you were, right? There were people standing there watching.
Yeah.
And if you went to your right on the other side, there were people standing there watching, right?
I think so.
Right. And cars were driving by and buses were driving by, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes cars, we see in your video, they would stop for quite some period of time and then drive off, right?
Yeah.
And would you also agree that as this incident progressed, the crowd of people started becoming more and more vocal?
Like, what do you mean? Like,
Well, they started yelling more.
I think so.
Right. So like that first video when you step outside and there's fewer people, there's not as many people yelling, right?
Yeah.
But by the end, when the ambulance takes Mr. Floyd away, there's a fairly large crowd out there, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of people yelling.
Okay.
I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
And those people, some of those people, you could tell were upset, right?
Yeah.
I think you said that a lot of people were yelling and fighting, right?
Yeah.
So you can get a sense that people were angry.
Okay.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
And that feeling of anger is different when you're there and watching it than when you're here talking about it in the courtroom.
I don't think so.
You don't think
I
so?
think if you're still upset about the situation, you're still going to be upset about it.
Understood. But in that moment, you would agree when there's people yelling and there's people driving by and there's people honking, right? That's a different feeling than you may still be upset here today in court. It's a much different feeling now than it is then.
Okay.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
All right. And ultimately, again, you took these various cell phone videos, you provided them to law enforcement voluntarily, right?
Yeah.
And then you went back inside, you finished your shift, and then when you left, the scene was taped off because it was a crime scene, right?
Yeah.
I have no further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes,
Why are they wasting time with
Thank
this
you.
witness?
So when you saw the officers bring Mr. Floyd across the street, did you see Mr. Floyd struggle with or resist the officers?
No.
Oh my God.
And when
Did you watch the video?
the officers first brought Mr. Floyd to the ground and you saw the 3 officers on top of him, there wasn't a large crowd at that time, was there?
I don't think so, no.
In fact, that didn't happen until much later, correct?
Yeah.
And you never saw the officers get up off of Mr. Floyd until after the ambulance arrived, after the stretcher was pulled out. Is that right?
Yep, that's what it said in the video. Well, shows in the video.
All right, nothing further.
All right, thank you. You may step down.
Gosh, thank goodness. What the hell did the jury get out of this testimony? Other than a bunch of video that they've already seen and they had a reason to show it again.
Mr. French?
Your Honor, the state would call Donald Williams to the stand.
You can just stand behind the chair for a second. Sir. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm, by the penalty of perjury, that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do, sir.
Tennessee.
Yes, Your Honor.
I haven't seen judges swear them in. Normally the court clerk swears them in. Maybe it's different over there.
Give us your full name, spelling each of your names.
Full name is Donald Wynn Williams II. Donald last name Williams II.
Thank you. Mr. Frank.
Mr. Williams,
Good afternoon.
can you tell the jurors roughly how old are you?
33.
Okay. And what do you do for a living?
I'm an entrepreneur and a professional fighter. And a father.
And a what?
And a father.
And that takes up probably as much time as all the others.
Yes, it does.
So you, by entrepreneur, you have some of your own companies that you run,
That is correct. Your Honor.
various businesses.
Correct.
Selling weed, you know. You're just saying that. I'm just saying because people that ain't got a job, they don't want to say what they do.
Unique situation, but I do have a place in Roseville in South Minneapolis.
And your place in South Minneapolis, well, are you familiar with Cup Foods?
That is correct.
And how far is your place from Cup Foods roughly?
Not too far from Cubs.
Good
Like,
Good enough?
so like literally, yeah, like on the next block,
Yep.
not too far down.
So how long have you lived in the Twin Cities area, the Minneapolis area?
Minneapolis, Twin Cities area for 33 years, pretty much my whole life. I'm a city kid.
Okay. And Mr. Williams, well, before I forget to ask you, you've done some work in the security field.
That is correct. Been working in security for over 10 years.
What does that mean? What do you do to work in security?
For security, private security, worked at the clubs, at Bitchute's, different clubs downtown Minneapolis. Worked at Allied Security for a year before the situation as well. And I've done private security for the Mystic Lake kids as well. So I've been working security for quite a few years.
And so that means everything from, I suppose, being what we might think of as a bouncer to just
Yeah,
keeping,
so
He's
from
a
being
bouncer.
to a private security, like I said, been a door guy to like escorting some of the high profile athletes as well too. Some of the comedians that came into Minnesota, and like I said, some of the high profile kids from Mystic Lake that families own Mystic Lake. I have done multiple private securities for them as well on different events throughout Minnesota.
so for doing that job, do you have to learn some use of force?
Correct. Well, my uniqueness is I'm a wrestler from high school that developed into a martial artist. So that's what gave me more of the opportunity to be able to do the private security and things like that. And just started connections from the mixed martial arts world, from my previous manager to the different friends inside of my circle.
And when you're doing security, do you sometimes have the opportunity to work with Minneapolis police officers?
That is correct. I have worked side by side with Minneapolis Police Departments and Minneapolis Police since I was 21 years old. And again, I'm 33 years old right now. I work downtown. Like Bitchute brought me in a couple of years ago when one of the top guys, Antonio, left to go to Vegas and work out in Vegas. Bitchute reached out to me and put me at the door, and I was able to control my city because I have a relationship with both sides of the city. No matter if it's business, streets, friends, different areas. My connection is pretty broad to the Twin Cities. So I'm able to talk certain people out of certain situations downtown from there. So, yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, so working security, you sometimes work with Minneapolis police officers who are also working security.
That is correct. Off duty.
And sometimes when they're called in as police officers to an incident.
That is correct.
And since you mentioned the mixed martial arts, let's talk about that a little bit. You mentioned also wrestling.
That is correct.
And when did you start in the sport of wrestling?
I started in 7th grade, or 7th grade.
Yeah, I haven't heard that yet.
Yeah, right. So,
Yeah.
Somebody might be upset if you start calling me. So you started wrestling at a very young age.
Correct.
And wrestling as a sport, what kind of things do you got to learn if you want to be a good wrestler?
That is correct.
What kind of things do you need to learn?
You need to learn one, the mentality of being a wrestler. You know, it's a hard pace, different grind. It's not really a sport, it's a lifestyle. You got to really learn the technique of wrestling. You know, and then it's different. You got to learn the different atmospheres of wrestling as well. You could be the top guy wrestling in an arena where everyone hates you, and you're wrestling against someone that everybody wants you to win. So you got to be able to absorb all that and be able to move forward and perform. So those three things.
And how about the physical aspects of it? What kind of things do you need to do to be a good wrestler physically to beat your opponent?
Yeah, you have to be able to condition your body. You have to be able to do different circuits, different workouts, running. Just conditioning your body to be able to be an elite wrestler.
Is there a lot of using your weight to control the other person?
That is right, correct. When you first start wrestling, you don't really understand the weight shift, and you're kind of like falling all over the place. But then eventually, you learn how to control your weight off of someone else's movement and body movement and things like that. So you know the different pressures and different just movement. And it's called flow wrestling. You eventually learn how to flow wrestle when it comes to that, and it's just like not being so resistant to everything.
So you're saying flow, F-L-O-W, not?
Yeah, like flow, F-L-O. Yeah, flow, W.
Wasn't sure if you said float or flow. So
Flow,
Got it.
F-L-O-W.
So would you tell the jurors then about your wrestling career?
Yeah, I wrestled Minneapolis Edison in high school. Again, I started in 7th grade, so I had to fast track and catch up to all the kids that was already better than me because most kids started at 4 years old. So coming into Edison, they were a really good program at the time, probably the best one since 2006. I was able to transfer in, crack the lineup at Edison, and I was a multiple-time state entrant, a couple times sections champs, and I went on and wrestled in college as well at DCTC. I wrestled there for 1 year, and then went over and wrestled at RCTC, which is another junior college. And from there, I just been growing into wrestling, learning different wrestling. I coach youth programs since I got out of high school, and I currently coach my kids right now. They currently wrestle in different friends' kids as well, and help them develop their skills and to do different private lessons and things like that with them. So this all started from me being a 7th grader, playing in the backyard with some friends, and they. That's fine. He asked me to explain.
Hey, he asked him to explain. He was answering the question. Somebody shut him off. I agree. I think he was doing a good job explaining.
Other questions. You mentioned DCTC.
Correct.
Can you describe for us what that is?
Dakota County Technical College.
Okay. So it's like a junior college
Yes,
wrestling.
junior college, correct.
And the other was RCTC?
Yep, Rochester Community College.
And so you wrestled at the college level.
Correct.
Then at some point, did you take up mixed martial arts?
Yes. About sophomore year at Rochester, I'm in a unique situation. I have my kid with me. So we kind of shifted towards getting our grades together and trying to create a plan to be able to wrestle in college eligibility-wise. I end up finding martial arts from different friends like Marcus Levester, Jack Jusila, Jafari Veneer, and Carey, and things like that were my coaches that wrestled. And they wrestled and coached me, and they ended up jumping into martial arts. And I came back to visit and kind of fell into the martial arts world with them.
So let me just
Yeah. So
you've done a lot in mixed martial arts. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and walk you through it a little bit.
Yep.
But what year was it that you started seriously training in mixed martial arts?
About let's see, 22.
What he's doing right now is trying to get credibility to witness. This guy knows a lot about wrestling. He's been involved in wrestling. He's done martial arts. He knows about weight shift. So when he saw Siobhan's knee on this guy's neck, he knew that it was causing damage. That's what I think this is leading to.
Ever done the mixed martial arts, what we call it, a fight, professionally?
Correct. Amateur. I got 10 amateur fights and about close to 20 professional fights.
So about 2009 you start,
Correct.
through 2020, correct?
Correct.
How often during that time period are you in the gym training?
That's Monday through Friday. like I devoted my life to mixed martial arts, and my kids' life to mixed martial arts. So it's a 40 hours or more a week job at the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy. I was in there majority in the mornings from 10 a.m. to sometimes 3 in the afternoon training for hopefully a fight.
So the Mixed Martial Arts Academy, that's the business where you trained?
That is the gym I train at, correct?
And when you were training there, did you ever did you ever train with Minneapolis police officers who were there?
Correct.
Describe that for the jury, please.
Not everybody, they don't always let you know that they're a cop or CIA agent or FBI agent, but we all kind of link together because they're trying to learn how to be able to defend different chokes or be able to detain different people. So Greg Nelson, which is the head professor there, he's a unique guy. He's been able to work close with the military and the Army and the combative team. So we get a lot of Army combative people coming in and training with us just so they can learn how to, defend yourself in war, I take it. And so I've been training next to some of them for, like I said, a decade.
And some of them are Minneapolis police officers training there.
Yeah, that is correct. And they're not all Minneapolis Police Department. They're from all different precincts, all different backgrounds of the law enforcement.
So when you're training in mixed martial arts, is part of the ultimate goal to get the other person to submit?
Yeah, that's the goal of it. Everybody gets into martial arts for different reasons. As you're rolling and understanding it, yes, your whole thing is to be able to get the person to submit when you do put a choke or a different submission on them.
So let me talk to you about that. So you're trained on what are called chokeholds.
Correct.
And what kind of training do you receive to do a chokehold?
Well, you go into a basic class. They teach you the basic techniques of jiu-jitsu, how to be able to defend yourself on the back, how to be able to defend off of a choke, and how to be able to put someone in a choke as well. And those are some of the basics that we learn from there.
So if we talk about specifically chokeholds involving the neck,
Correct.
did you also have to learn about the structures in the neck that can lead to a chokehold?
Correct.
And
Different. There's air chokes and there's blood chokes and there's limb chokes.
so explain the first two, though.
Air choke is more of like choking someone. They still have air to breathe in there, and they're able to, absorb it and feel it, and then you also have a choke where it's a blood choke where it specifically attacks the side of the neck and it specifically cuts off the circulation of your arteries and stops the different blood flowing from top of your head to the bottom of your head. And sometimes you could get in a blood choke and not know you're in a blood choke until you're unconscious.
In your training, have there been times when you've been rendered unconscious through a chokehold?
Correct. I have been submitted on a professional level in live matches, and I have over 30 jiu-jitsu submission matches where I have got caught in a submission before on a rear naked choke and a front choke. Been only choked out twice in the jiu-jitsu side, but on my martial arts, on the fighting side, I've been submitted maybe 3 times on a side choke.
So in that training, do they have to teach you what that's like so you know to avoid it?
Yes, correct. So it's the uniqueness. You have to kind of like be acceptable to being choked. You can't just not normal people can just really get choked. You got to relax. You got to be able to breathe. You got to be able to let the choke happen, and you got to be able to know when to actually tap out on the choke because you're in practice. You're not trying to put this person to sleep, but you're trying to get them to understand how it feels to be choked. So we do go back and forth choking each other. Sometimes you'll see white stars when you get choked, and it kind of like helps you understand, when you went too far, and some people choke tolerance is higher than normal, some are really low, where when you do put a blood choke, they're tapping right away, and some people will be able to absorb it and actually meditate there because they want to be able to be comfortable in a choke and be able to get out of it in a live action.
So you use the term tap out. What does that mean?
So tap out will be, for instance, so if I have you in submission and I feel like it's getting to a certain point where it's not comfortable for me, I just tap my opponent, and my opponent releases his choke, and then we're back to grappling again. and you know, I catch him in a submission. If he's not comfortable, he taps, and this goes for the neck, limbs, and all that, so you don't harm each other during practice.
What can happen, have you learned through your training and experience, if you don't tap out, if a choke goes too far?
If you don't tap out, you can lose consciousness, and you can develop different, I'm not a doctor, but insomnia from your brain to your body because of lack of oxygen and things like that.
So we talked about that a lot, but I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Correct.
We'll come back to that in a little bit.
Yes, sir.
I want to take your attention back to May 25th of 2020. You remember that day?
Correct. I do.
And on that day, at some point, did you go to Cup Foods?
Correct.
And prior to going to Cup Foods that day, had you done any activities with, for instance, your son?
Correct. Yeah. So earlier that day, I just went fishing with some wrestling friends, wrestling family, me and my son, and yeah, we came caught maybe 3 bass throughout that whole day of fishing. It's a beautiful day during the day, so everybody was out on the lake, so we went fishing and caught 3 bass. After we got done fishing, rolled around a little bit, had to fish in a little bowl on the side, you know, the boat swimming around the water, uncomfortableness. And once we got done fishing, we had to, you know, drain the water, take our fish, and find somewhere to actually transport our fish back home on a, you know, safe way, I guess, to their depth. So we put them in a bag and tied them up, and we pretty much suffocated them on our way home for our ride.
So that you could enjoy them later.
Yeah, so we can actually cut them up, eat them, and freeze them, which are still in the freezer.
And so at some point then you decided to go to Cup Foods. Why did you decide to go there that day?
This guy's like, when you ask what time it is, he tells you how the watch is built.
So I went to Cup Foods because I haven't cut a fish up in since I was about 23, working at a butcher at Solo grocery store. So me and the fish we were going through some things of watching this fish actually die and watching him lose his air and watching his eyes actually roll back in the back of his head. So after we got done cutting them up, me and my son was actually watching on a YouTube channel trying to figure out how to actually cut the fish the proper way and make sure that we're doing it right, cutting the fins off, chopping the side of the head off, you know, filleting the fish. So after I got done doing that, I just needed air for myself. So I went to the store to go get something to drink at the time, and I kind of just snuck out from the family once I got done cutting the fish.
So did you drive there?
That is correct, I did drive.
Okay, I'm going to show you something we've already received as Exhibit 1 on the screen. Can you show Exhibit 1, please? Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Correct.
All right. And this is the intersection of 38th and Chicago where Cup Foods is, correct?
Correct.
And you will notice on the bench in front of you, one of these little styluses, hopefully.
Correct.
And you can draw on this, and I'd ask you just to show the jurors where you drove up and where you parked.
Is it showing up? Is it showing up on there or no?
I don't see it yet.
I don't see it either. Oh, there it goes. Came from that angle. So I parked somewhere in here.
All right. So for the record, you drove down 38th Street towards Cup Foods and parked on 38th next to Cup Foods.
That is correct.
All right. Okay. And I'm going to show you some photographs to sort of help illustrate what you did that day, all right? And I'm going to first, Your Honor, offer Exhibit 18.
No objection.
18 is received.
Okay, can you put 18 up, please? Now, do you recognize this photograph?
Correct.
This is something we had shown to you before.
That is correct.
And who is that in the photograph?
That is Donald Wynn Williams II, which is me.
Okay.
Wow, he's got a hoodie on. Uh-oh.
Parked on 38th?
That is correct.
And that's you walking up.
That is correct.
And can you describe for us what you're wearing, the sweatshirt that you're wearing?
Northside Boxing Club.
So that's not the academy where you train, that's just another club.
No, that is not. It's the youth gym for boxing.
And so when you decided to go to Cup Foods, did you, get all dressed up and get ready for going out?
No, not at all.
Okay. This is just an outfit you threw on?
That is correct.
All right. When you were on your way to Cup Foods, did you grab your cell phone and take it with you?
That is correct.
You got it with you?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. And
Which car is
so
his?
after you got out of your car, as you walked up towards Cup Foods, did you notice any police cars in the area?
That is correct. I did.
Okay. And describe for the jurors then kind of what you saw as you're walking up.
As you can tell by my face expression, I was kind of like, oh, police is here. And I noticed that there was 2 police squad cars out there. And I just had a look on my face like, oh, we're in the city, something else is going on. Should I get back in my car or not?
Okay. And what did you decide to do?
My energy just kept pushing me forward, and I kept walking.
Okay. And so you kept walking towards the store?
That is correct. I started walking towards Cub Foods entrance.
And did you end up going into Cup Foods?
No, I did not make it into Cub Foods.
Why not? What stopped you?
My energy stopped me, the surroundings stopped me, the energy of the air, just me as a person, if people know me personally.
You stopped because you saw the cops beating up a black dude. Just say it.
Reason, and then once I realized why.
So when you came around, so Cup Foods sits on the corner, correct?
That is correct.
So 18 shows you walking up on the 38th Street side.
Correct.
When you get around the corner, what is it that starts to affect your energy and your decision to go in the store or not?
Yeah, so I was just sitting at the door, just like, man, there's so much going over here. Do I involve myself? Because I'm usually, I pay attention to my city. So I was contemplating with myself, do I involve myself or do I go inside the store? I started hearing different voices from people that they know, telling someone that they just calm down, everything's going to be okay. And then I heard, some people saying that, I'm looking for some point for their mother. And I heard another voice just saying that, you should let them up and that he's not resisting arrest. And it was just certain things that just kept boop, 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 hitting me while I was standing there like, should I go in the door or not?
And did you go into the store then?
I did not go into the store.
All right. So now I'm going to show you, well, first I will offer Exhibit 19.
Any objection?
No.
19 is received.
Put 19 up, please. And do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
That is correct.
And is that you then walking along Chicago?
That is correct, walking on Chicago.
All right. So when you get into this area, is this, well, what are you experiencing right here where you're walking along?
Again, like I said, I was just hearing different emotions, different comments, and at this point I just was kind of like observing. So I kind of like slowly trotted over there.
And we can see in Exhibit 19, there's a couple other people on the sidewalk here. Did you know any of those people as you walked up?
No, I did not know no one out there at all.
The first people that you see while you're there, well, you stayed at that area for quite a while, correct?
That is correct.
So the people that you first see as you're walking up, can you kind of describe how they looked or how they appeared to you, who they were?
Correct. Again, I don't know none of them. I just remember off of certain visualization that it was 3 people outside. It was an older guy, a younger lady, and maybe one more other gentleman out there. And yeah.
And then this photograph also shows in front of you a person with a green shirt. Do you remember seeing that person?
Not at all.
Okay.
Like she wasn't like in, she was there, but I didn't see her.
Okay. And so you, well, from where you are in this photograph, where did you go? What did you end up doing?
I believe I ended up probably standing next to this little spot right here where she's standing at a point. I probably was standing somewhere in here after I came from this way, and I just sat there and chilled right in this area for a second, observing like security officers do. I observed the scene first before I spoke.
And as you observed it, what are you seeing and hearing?
Well, once I get there, I hear an older guy saying it's gonna be okay, acquisition arrest. They're gonna get you up and put you in the car, and just
Hope he brings that back up. You heard somebody tell him to quit resisting, so obviously he was resisting.
pretty much pleading for his life, saying he's sorry, I can't breathe, I want my mom, just please let me up, and things like that.
So, while we still have Exhibit 19 up, can you show the jury after you got done observing, where did you go from there?
I ended up somewhere in this vicinity throughout the whole time.
Okay. And so when you went over by the curb area there, what did you see happening on the ground behind the squad car?
Well, before I walked up, I noticed there was an officer standing right here, kind of pretty much dictating the crowd from only standing on this curb right here where they're at. Noticed that part right away. And then I finally noticed it's going to be on the opposite side, but I noticed George's head was kind of sticking out from the side of the car. And then I noticed Officer Chavez right here with his knee circulated on George's neck. But this is all happening on this side of the car.
All right, we'll get to that in just a second while we're still on this photograph.
Correct.
When you went over there initially, did you leave the curb and go onto the street?
There is a possibility that I was battling with myself to stay on the curb and throughout the time. Correct.
We know later you went into the street area, but when you first got there, did you stay on the curb?
Yeah, when I first got there, I stayed right here. I didn't move too much right there. I stayed here, and I might have stepped down once or twice back and forth, but I can't 100% remember.
And you saw an officer standing in that area you showed us before.
Yeah, he was about like somewhere.
Did you learn later that officer's name?
Yeah, I read his badge. I read his badge. Can I say his name right now? No. But at the time, I think I called him by his name from his badge, just from visualization, reading his badge.
Was it Officer Tao?
Correct.
All right. And you were able to read that from his badge on his uniform?
That's how much respect I try to give him at the beginning.
And so you saw him there,
Correct.
and what did you understand his role to be when you were observing?
He was a dictator. He dictated what went on the curb. He controlled the people. He controlled me, and he was the guy that let it go on, why it went on.
If he's a security guard, he should know that he was basically controlling the crowd, and his job was to keep the crowd away from the officers doing their job. But he's using the term dictator.
Correct.
Where was this individual you referred to as Mr. Floyd?
Can you please repeat that?
Sure. Where was this individual that you have referred to as Mr. Floyd?
Mr. Floyd, again, was on this side of the car, angled down by the tire area in this area, but on this side of the car.
And at this time, prior to coming into court, did we show you a photograph of the officer with Mr. Floyd on the ground?
Can you please repeat that?
Yeah, prior to court today, did we show you a photograph of that officer with Mr. Floyd on the ground?
That is correct.
And that photograph, did it fairly depict what you saw when you got there first?
That is correct.
Your Honor, to that extent, I would offer Exhibit 17.
Any objection?
17.
Now, I'm going to show Exhibit 17 on the screen, and so this is what you saw when you...
This guy looks pretty buff, man. I bet you he's a pretty good little fighter.
Yeah, this is what I saw, and the only reason why he's looking at me right now is because I told him it was a blood choke.
Okay. We will come back to that in a little bit. When you were there, was Mr. Floyd able to speak?
That is correctly. He was speaking in a distress way.
And what kinds of things led you to believe he was distressed?
He was vocalizing it to the officer. He said, "My stomach hurt. I can't breathe. My head hurts. I want my mom." Yeah, those are the things that he repeatedly said. He wanted to get out the car. He said he's sorry for what he did. He pleaded with my mans and told him, like, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't pretty much have to die."
And so did you feel like you could have walked closer from this vantage point on the curb?
I could have. I felt that way in a way, but there's a fear factor as well.
And at this time, so you had seen Officer Tao, and you had seen this officer in Exhibit 17
Correct.
on Mr. Floyd. Did you see any other officers at the scene at that time?
No, I did not.
Were you, and so this in Exhibit 17 shows the vantage point you had, the view you had from where you were standing.
Correct. I only had that side view of the two officers and the shoulder length of George Floyd's head. Nothing else.
And when you were in this location, can you describe for the jurors what you saw about Mr. Floyd, how he appeared? Well, let me back up just for a second. You've used Mr. Floyd's name. Did you know him at the time?
I did not know Mr. Floyd at all. No real connection.
So you're using his name because you've learned since then who he is.
Correct. Can't go too many places without not knowing his name or seeing his face in Minnesota.
So when you're in this location, you first come up and you're seeing him, he's able to speak.
Correct.
Can you describe what you saw of Mr. Floyd's condition as time progressed here?
As time progressed, so when I first arrived on the scene, Mr. Floyd was vocalizing his sorriness and his pain and his distress that he was going through. The more that the knee was blocked on his neck and shimmying was going on, the more you seen Floyd fade away and slowly fade away, and like the fish in a bag, you seen his eyes slowly, pale out and again slowly roll to the back of his eyes. And so this is what I seen, this is what I heard, and that's how, what it was. Like, he was going through distress because of the knee, and he vocalized it that I can't breathe, I need to get up, and I'm sorry. And his eyes slowly rolled to the back of his head. You seen the blood coming out of his nose. You heard him tell him before he stopped speaking that my stomach hurts, and those most of the times is the last bowel movement of your life. So from there on, he was lifeless. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He didn't have no life in him, no more on his body movements.
During that time period, did you notice anything about his breathing that was significant to you?
Yes, just like in MMA, you could tell when someone gets tired, or you could tell when someone's getting choked out, or things like that. His breathing was getting tremendously heavy and tremendously harder for him to breathe, and you actually could hear him. You could see him struggling to actually gasp for air while he was trying to breathe. And I mean, he barely could move while he was trying to get air.
As you were standing there, did others gather around?
Correct. At the moment, I was the most vocalist person out there pleading for Floyd's life because I felt like it was definitely in the wrong. And there was at one point in time a medic came on scene, and she spoke on checking pulse, what made me even go even more harder because I heard it and then I registered in it like, oh, you do need to check his pulse. Oh, he is not moving. Like, oh, you just killed this man, And so her expertise was like, look, he's fading away. You need to check his pulse. She's asking him multiple times. I'm asking him multiple times. No one checked his pulse.
Do you remember Officer Tao saying anything during this time period?
Yeah, he did what an American does, and he blamed it on drugs for being a black man on the ground.
Let me just stop
Sorry
you.
about that, yeah.
What did he say about drugs?
He said, this is what drugs do to you. And I replied, this is not what drugs do to you.
So did that Officer Tao saying that help the situation?
No, it didn't. If I'll be honest with you, in the case, you know what I mean?
So When you were
I wonder why they cut that out.
there, seeing this, did you draw on your training and experience in wrestling and mixed martial arts to draw some conclusion about what this officer in Exhibit 17 was doing?
Can you go ahead and repeat that?
Yep, it's kind of a long question.
Yes, it was.
As you're standing there, seeing what you've described to the jury, did you draw on your training and experience in wrestling and mixed martial arts to get an idea of what this officer was doing physically there?
Correct. Yes. So like as I'm standing there and observing everything, before I even spoke, if you've seen the video, I watched what was going on, and as he's positioned here before I even spoke to the officer, I watched the position, one, of where the position of the neck or the knee was on the neck, two, what body movements was going on while the knee was on the neck, and then three, what was the condition of George Floyd while he was going through this torture. One was that the neck was diagonal across the throat, which on a blood choke, you would tack the side of the neck, and which you're in a Kimura or side chokes or things like that, you want to tack the side of the neck to cut the circulation of the breathing from your person. And then to get the choke tighter, you hit different shimmies, which I felt the officer on top was shimmying to actually get the final choke in while he was on top to get the kill choke, because a side choke or a blood choke can ultimately turn into death, and that's what we've seen here.
And so,
Jury is to disregard the last,
Yeah, see, he just made a conclusion that that choke killed him, and that's not evidence. He doesn't know that.
and so, did you think, based on your training experience, that this looked like a blood choke?
That is correct.
And did you say that to the officer?
That's correct.
And how did he respond when you said that to him?
He looked at me right here. It's the only time he looked at me. When I said it was a blood choke, it's the only time he looked up. We looked each other dead in our eyes. Yeah, and when I said it, he acknowledged it.
And,
Like we're looking at each other right here.
last statement is sustained as non-responsive.
and so
So the defense is starting to cut this guy off because he's wants to push his agenda and he's not answering questions. So that's why he objected non-responsive. He just threw in that and he wasn't asked a question.
from that vantage point depicted in Exhibit 17, that officer, do you see that person present in the courtroom today?
That's correct. He's standing right there.
In order to ask the record to reflect he's identified the defendant?
It will so reflect.
When you were there at the scene, did you at one point tell the officers that you were trained at the academy?
That is correct.
And what did you mean by academy?
A short name for the Mixed Martial Arts Academy.
Now, as this was happening, did other people eventually come to the scene?
That is correct.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 184. Before we put that up, Your Honor, I would offer Exhibit 184. It's not on.
Girls, we're going to start with
We'll come back to that later. When this crowd was there, do you recall roughly how many people were there?
No, I do not.
At any time, did you hear anybody threaten to harm the officers?
No. Well, I don't want to say harm. I mean, some kid that might have called the police, or I'm not sure exactly from when I talked to him after the situation, but he did come out once he realized what was going on, and he almost tried to rile the crowd back up, and I just kind of nah, just chill out. It's too late. You can't do that. Just go back inside. So that was the only incident I recall of.
And when you did that to him, did he go back inside?
Yeah, he went back inside crying. He was a younger kid.
Now, earlier you mentioned the term shimmy.
Correct.
I've just been spelling S-H-I-M-M-Y. Good enough?
Yeah, good enough. I never gave it a spelling of it, but yeah, shimmy.
And so that's a move that you learned in your training for mixed martial arts holds.
That is correct.
And what's the purpose of doing a shimmy?
To get the choke tighter, to close the gap of the air between your arm and the neck.
And were there times that you saw things that you thought you recognized as a shimmy by this officer on Mr. Floyd?
That is definitely correct.
Your Honor, just for the record, we are going to show a portion of a video that I think counsel will stipulate to its admissibility. We'll lay full foundation for it tomorrow, and I'm only going to show a portion of it for this witness today. And that's Exhibit 15.
Any objection to the partial? Exhibit 15, it will be received, subject to later foundation.
Now, Mr. Williams, you did not take any video at the scene yourself.
That is correct. No video.
And we had an opportunity to show you a video earlier, and did that video fairly and accurately depict what you were seeing there?
From a live angle, yes. From myself, yes.
What I'm going to do is play a portion of Exhibit 15, and it's the time period roughly when you are there. And while we play it, I would just ask that you explain to the jury the things that you saw you would consider a shimmy, and just sort of explain how what it is that you're seeing to make you think that. Is that
Correct.
all right?
Yes.
All right. So we'll do Exhibit 15, starting at 44 seconds.
Let's breathe, please, man. I've been trying to help out. Let's breathe with this man.
See, like he just did it right there. You see his foot is on the, his toe is pointing down, and you will see a small gesture in his back foot like this. And that's the pressure you push more down between his knee, George's head, and the concrete, and cut off circulation.
All right, and we'll continue on that, please.
Yeah, he just did it again.
We saw that movement there that
Correct.
moves the knee on
And his
that.
foot, this time his foot came up off the ground, so no foot on the ground, so all the pressure is on his neck.
And you're talking about the foot on the same leg as the knee.
Yep, so, correct. So the same foot on the knee, so it's like this, it's a choke here, so this is, for instance, my neck here, and then for me to close this, I shimmy, I shimmy, I shimmy, I shimmy, I shimmy, and now I close the choke on the side of the neck.
And just for the
So I get
record,
that shimmy.
sorry,
Yeah,
just for the record, you're demonstrating with your arms on
yep, I'm demonstrating with my arms, so, that's choke, you know, from neck here, and for instance, my neck would be from here, so I would have this across from here, and then I'm closing it off here, pretty much the angle of his knee, and then every time I'm shimmying, I'm getting this right here to close the gap closer within my neck, and it's the same way that you can do without having the neck across here.
So we'll continue on with the video then.
What do you want? I can breathe.
They just did it again, they did it again, they did it again.
Well, get up, get in the car, man. I will. Get up, get in the
It's
car.
just a small gestures, and then you'll see his shoulders slowly swag. Sorry.
Okay, so,
Oh, sorry about that.
yeah. So what we'll do is we'll wait. We've stopped the video at this portion, and if you could just explain what you're seeing here
Correct.
that leads you to believe this is a shimmy type move.
So explain now.
Correct.
Okay, good. So the gestures and the movements is from his shoulders and the top, and this is he's just doing it with his knees. Not it's not an actual choke on with the hands. Now he's actually putting the same pressure as you would with your neck. And like I said, every time his shoulder is moving, he's pushing that pressure down on his neck from the shoulders to the knees, all the way from this ankle. And you will see his shoulder shift, and then you'll see the bottom of his knee shift, and his foot come off. The one time he took his foot off the ground and put multiple pressure. Now his foot's not on the ground. He's driving off his hard foot.
And, as you're seeing this, are you also seeing things on Mr. Floyd's face that you testified to earlier?
Correct.
All right. So let's continue with the video then.
Get up, get in the car. Mama. Get up, get in the car, right. I can't. Gave y'all the opportunity to get in, brother. You can't win. My knee. You can't win, man. I'm through. I know you didn't have you didn't listen. That's the movie. My stomach hurts. My dick hurts. Everything hurts. Put some water or something. Please. Please. I can't breathe on
Can we stop? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, well, so George is trying to turn.
Okay. So something that you see at this moment in the video that is significant to you?
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell us then what that is.
George wants to turn his face the other way to release the pressure, but he can't because he's putting the pressure on the way that he's trying to.
He doesn't know what George wants to do. Object.
Jury will disregard the last answer in its entirety. Calls for speculation.
There you go.
I'm going to ask it. Members of the jury, if you could go out and wait in the other courtroom for a second.
See, this witness almost looks like he's got an agenda.
You see it? Hey. Mr. Williams, I just want to advise you that we had a lot of discussion and motion hearings on how far your expertise can go. And it's very important that we stick to those restrictions that we put on it. You're kind of going beyond it with not being responsive to an answer by talking about killing him and things like that. What I'd like you to do.
Explain in the video what I think. So
Well,
I explain what I see. That's what I've seen in the visualization.
This is what I need you to listen to. If you are explaining, you're explaining what you see, what inference or what opinions you're drawing from there. You need to wait for Mr. Frank to ask you an opinion, and he'll be specific and lead on that question. Because we don't want you unknowingly, I'm not saying you're trying to screw around with it, because you weren't present for all the motions. He's going to lead you through some opinions. But generally, when you are talking about the video, it's what you observed, not what conclusions you drew from there, or not what your opinion is about what's happening. So if he says explain...
That's what I observed, him trying to turn his face away from the pressure.
And that's fine. It started to get into more things. I think it's very important that Mr. Frank's going to ask you probably maybe a little more specific questions so that we avoid these areas. This is not your fault in the least. It's just that there's certain things I'm allowing you to testify to, and that's fine. But we have to be very careful to make sure we don't go beyond those. And so otherwise I'll have to just be telling the jury to disregard. You're doing fine, but I just want you to know you've got to be careful not to volunteer things that are not being asked.
So say it a little bit better and different wording than what you're saying.
And I think Mr. Frank is going to be a little more specific in his questions,
Okay.
so he can lead you kind of to where you need to be, as opposed to explain.
Now see, the defense likes when he goes off and makes all these conclusions, or the prosecution, because it helps their case. But he's not allowed to do that, and then it looks like the defense is objecting, and it sounds like they already had a pre-conference on this and said, look, this guy ain't an expert, he ain't trained in police training, he may have missed martial arts, so he ain't giving an opinion on use of force. He may give an opinion on chokehold that he knows, but he ain't giving it on everything, and that's where he's going.
No. I was trying to explain it, but I said it the wrong way.
Yep, and that's my fault for not
Correct.
asking you specifically, and I will do that. Just if you see something here, based on your training experience, that you would do to try and avoid that situation. Fair enough?
Correct.
And then after that, when we watch the rest of the video, I just want you to tell me if you see like a shimmy anymore.
Okay. So we just focused in on the shimmies. You say what I observed.
After I ask you the one specific question about Floyd's movement.
Correct.
All right.
Yes, sir.
And less is usually more. Sounds like everybody wants to go on a sidebar.
Yes, Judge.
Okay. Go outside, Bar.
All right, so they're going on the sidebar, so we're not going to know a whole bunch. This witness is really good for the prosecution because he's not following the rules, and he's testifying with emotion.
All right, so it looks like they've gone into a sidebar.
Okay, I think they're back. Maybe we're waiting on the jury.
Chair, part of the reason why we are televising the trial is because this is such a small courtroom that in order for it to truly be a public trial, we have some feeds that are going to other parts of the building where family members are at. And that has gone down. And we don't want the family members to be deprived of, obviously, being able to see because we don't have such limited seating here. So we are going to shut it down for today. We're going to let you go. It's almost about...
Okay, so this has gone on for an hour. And the prosecution haven't even finished with this guy. So they're going to pick up tomorrow with this guy. And then I think the defense is going to have a field day with this guy. But maybe he won't, because he won't want to come off like he's attacking this guy, because they'll call him a racist if he does. So it'll be a little bit harder for him to get to the truth. But we'll see. All right, we'll end that one there.